Hello and welcome to another review of Junji Maniac, Japanese Tales of the Macabre. This is episode 2, and in this episode we actually cover two different short stories. So we have the story of the mysterious tunnel, and we have Ice Cream Truck. I think maybe this one should have been the first episode. Like I said in the previous video, I thought it was weird that they started this series with the siblings. I think the story of the mysterious tunnel would probably have been a good start, actually. I am a little bit upset that we're getting two stories in one episode, because then each story is now kind of cut into pieces instead of extrapolating it into a half-hour episode. Especially the story of the mysterious tunnel. Like, the story of the mysterious tunnel is one of my favorite Junji Ito stories. It's just so freaking disturbing, and yeah, I think it would have done really well for a 20-minute episode rather than being cut down to like 10 minutes. But let's just get right into the review. So we're going to start off with the story of the mysterious tunnel. So in this one, we start off with Goro, our main character, and he is younger. And this is like a flashback, or I guess we start off with just him as a really small child. And he sees his mom. He's walking with his mom. And his mom lets go of his hand and walks into a tunnel. And she disappears. She ends up dying. Later on, we see that's what happened is she goes into the tunnel, disappears into the tunnel, and then all of a sudden a train comes out. And I guess she got ran over. We cut to years later where he's now a teenager. And he's hanging out with some friends. And his friends decide to go check out the mysterious tunnel. And they're in there, they're talking about how like people have disappeared in there, how there's supposed to be something strange in the middle of the tunnel, but no one knows what it is. And as they're walking, something drips on one of the boys. It turns out to be water. He freaks out because he thinks it's blood, but it's just water. And then up ahead, they see this little girl, or they see a figure. And the boys freak out, they run out, and Goro shines his flashlight, and it's his little sister, Mari. And Mari starts crying, and she starts saying that she has no idea how she got here. Like, she just woke up and she was in this tunnel and she's scared. And so Goro takes his sister back home, and she has a fever. She's laying in bed, she's resting, and Goro's talking to his father and kind of saying, like, have you talked to Mari about mom? And he's like, no, I haven't done that yet. So he's like, it's just kind of weird how she would just go out into the tunnel. Because Mari doesn't know how their mom died. So they go to sleep, and Goro has a nightmare. And he has a nightmare of what happened with his mom going in the tunnel, the train coming out, and then the funeral. So he wakes up, he's freaked out. And the next day, he arrives home from school, and his dad's asking, have you seen Mari? And Goro says, no, like, she has a fever. She should have been home. And the dad says, yeah, but last time I checked, she was gone. And Goro immediately thinks maybe she went to the tunnel. So the dad's like, you stay here. I'm going to go try to find her. So he puts on his winter gear, grabs a flashlight, rushes out. Hours pass, and the father never shows back home. So Goro goes, and he decides to investigate the tunnel. And before he goes inside, he sees footprints. Footprints that belong to adults, and footprints that belong to a small child. And he goes in and he sees his dad's flashlight, but his dad's nowhere around. And he's walking, and something drips from the ceiling onto his face. And he thinks this is water, so he just, rubs it away. But it's actually blood. This should kind of be your hint about what's going on. And he reaches the middle of the tunnel. And in the middle of the tunnel is a door. And it's a cosmic ray observatory. And he goes inside, and he sees a bunch of machinery, and he sees scientists, and they're questioning Mari. And he's like, they ask him, like, do you know who this little girl is? And he's like, yeah, she's my sister. And one of the scientists, her name is Koyama. Koyama says, like, oh, well, we found this little girl here. She seems to be lost and scared. Maybe you can take her home. And, she tells Mari, like, don't come over here anymore because, it could be pretty dangerous, especially by yourself. And Goro asks if they've seen his father. And they say no. And he's like, well, that's kind of weird because he had to have gone through here. I saw his equipment inside the tunnel, and if he was still there, I would have passed him. Maybe he went through here and out the other side. The scientist's like, no, because if anyone had come through here, we would have known. But Koyoma will give you a ride across the other side of the tunnel, and then you can see if you can find your father. And so Koyama gives Goro a ride in this little truck, and as they're doing the ride, he kind of questions Koyama on what exactly the cosmic ray observatory is, and she basically explains that they observe cosmic rays that are transmitted from space. They're not visible to the naked eye, and because there are rays, they can go through humans and surfaces and stuff like that, as if they were X-rays. But they pass through the entire hill and enter this tunnel. And so a lot of universities use old tunnels to kind of observe this phenomenon. And of course, Goro doesn't really understand. But they get out the other side of the tunnel, and no sign of Goro's father, no set of footprints. The only thing on the other side of the tunnel are tire tracks, which are the tire tracks caused by the truck when the scientists showed up that morning. So Koyama's like, well, maybe your father is waiting for you at home. So she turns the truck around to go back into the tunnel. And then she asks him if he's okay because there's blood on his cheek. So Goro or Mari go back home. Days pass. Their father still has never shown up. Mari continues going to the tunnel. Like, they keep finding her inside the tunnel. Goro is there, and Koyama's talking to Goro, like, have you found your father yet? And he says no. She's like, well, is there like any other family members that you can stay until your father shows up? And Goro mentions Tokyo, like he has an aunt that lives there. And all of a sudden, one of the scientists starts feeling weird. He starts feeling exhausted ever since he came to the tunnel. And Koyama basically says, yeah, I've been feeling the same thing as well. And that's when the third scientist shows up. And he's like, it's a photo. It's a photo that we took days ago. It's finally been developed. And they look at the photo, and it's the three of them standing outside the door that leads into their little laboratory inside the tunnel. And there's a bunch of these weird rays that are bouncing around the tunnel. And when they look closer, the rays kind of have humanoid figures. They look almost like people, like flying humans. And one of the scientists thinks that's maybe what we're experiencing is small dosage of radiation poisoning. We shouldn't be here anymore. We're gonna stop coming to this tunnel. Like, we're gonna just cease research for a while. And so we cut to the next day, where Goro receives a phone call, and it's from Koyama, and she's basically saying, you need to come over here immediately. Something awful is happening. Or she screams, and that's it. Like, the call gets cut. So Goro rushes into the tunnel, rushes through the research facility. It's empty. It's like things are just knocked all over the place. And the door on the other side is open. So he looks inside, and he just sees this terrifying scene. Koyama is hugging Mari. They're both kind of really like freaking out. And the two scientists are being sucked into the walls and through the floor. Like, it's almost like the wall and the floor is like quicksand, and it's just slowly sucking them in. And once they go through, nothing but blood appears. So somehow this tunnel is killing everybody. It's sucking them in. And we have this really like sad scene where Mari is like begging for her brother to help her because she's scared. And she starts going through Koyama's body. Like, she sinks through Koyama's body and starts sinking into the floor. And she's like screaming for her brother to help. And he tries to grab her hand, but his hands just go through hers. And she sinks into the floor, and just blood piles up. And Koyama's like, we gotta go. We gotta just run. We gotta get the hell out of here. And they're running, and Koyama trips and falls. And as Goro goes to help her up, they see something rushing at them in the distance. It's just a bunch of like flickering lights zigzagging across the tunnel. And it turns out that it's the two scientists and Mari. And they're like dead. And they're like, don't leave us. One of the scientists falls from the ceiling, passes through Koyama, and Koyama starts sinking through the floor. Mari starts falling towards Goro, but Goro is able to dodge. And he starts rushing out. And as he rushes out, these spirits start passing through him. And eventually he falls to the floor, and his hand starts sinking through the floor. And that's how it ends. Like, he basically dies. Yeah, I love this short story. It doesn't ever explain anything, and that's kind of Junji Ito's way of telling stories. Like he has a lot of cosmic horror, and some things are just left unexplained. My interpretation of what's going on is that the cosmic rays have basically trapped the souls within this tunnel. So when people die in the tunnel, their souls aren't able to go on and move on to the afterlife because they try to go into they just bounce off the walls and the ceiling and the floor because of all this radiation. And so you have all these spirits that are trapped here for eternity, and they just want to get out, but they can't. And anyone who gets inside the tunnel, the spirits reach out to them to try to get out, and instead they end up just dragging in more victims. And so the tunnel just gets even more and more haunted. That's my interpretation. But I love this short story. I am a little bit confused on why they decided to change the ending. So in the original ending, Goro doesn't die. What happens is, as Goro is rushing out, some of the spirits pass through him, but I believe they pass through him just as he's leaving. So just as he makes it out of the tunnel. So they're not able to do anything to him. He's able to get out, and he actually moves away. He ends up moving in with his aunt in Tokyo, the aunt that he mentions earlier. And he grows up. He starts suffering from mental stress and fatigue and stuff. And his aunt eventually tells him that she heard that more people have disappeared from the village. It must be related to some kind of curse. And Goro is like, no, it's the tunnel. The tunnel is the one that's doing it. Everyone's getting swallowed up by the tunnel. And then time passes. His aunt eventually dies. And before Goro knows it, he finds himself back in his hometown. It's been 20 years. So 20 years have passed since he was last there. And everyone is just gone. The place is deserted. There's no one living in this place anymore. And he finds himself drawn towards the tunnel. And he stops outside the tunnel entrance. And he basically says, after 20 years, like, the tunnel looks more horrifying than ever. And all I can see are familiar faces. And then we just see all the, all of his friends, his family, the scientists. We see their ghostly apparitions bouncing through the tunnel. And that's how it ends. And I kind of like that version a little bit more. Because one, I mean, it's up to you if you want Goro to die. My take is that eventually he ends up going to the tunnel. Because no matter what, this tunnel draws people in. And that's what I find more horrifying, is the fact that you can't escape it. So even in the manga, he moves away to a different city. 20 years pass. But eventually, at some point in time, he feels compelled to go back. And when he goes back, everyone is gone. So it's hinted that everybody was drawn into this tunnel at some point. And I like that. I like the sense that it's something that you can't escape. You can't run away from. Even if you move to a different city, maybe even a different country, eventually you're going to be drawn back to this tunnel. And there's just something horrifying about that. So I would have liked if they had stuck to the original ending rather than just he ends up getting caught in the tunnel and not making it out and just dies. I don't know. I like the original manga version way more. But other than that, this was a pretty faithful adaptation. Like, up until that point, it's pretty much a 1-for-1. And so I enjoyed it. I didn't really care too much for the ending. I thought the ending could have been a lot better. But yeah, there you go. There's the story of the mysterious tunnel. And up next, we have Ice Cream Truck. So Ice Cream Truck is a lot shorter than the story of the mysterious tunnel. And it's a story about a single father who has divorced from his wife, and he has custody of his kid, Tomoki. And they move into this new city, and this ice cream truck shows up. And there's this mysterious young ice cream truck vendor that steps out of this ice cream truck. And as soon as ice cream truck shows up, all the kids in the neighborhood rush towards it. All the moms are kind of there watching. And basically the kids line up for ice cream, and Tomoki wants some, but the father's like, nah, we're going to have dinner first. And after the kids get their ice cream, the ice cream truck driver lets all the kids on board his truck, and then they drive around the city. And the father's kind of confused. He's like, what exactly is going on here? And the moms explain that every Saturday the ice cream truck shows up and all the kids get excited. And the truck driver explains that he takes a tour of the city with the kids, and the kids get to eat ice cream as he takes them on this tour. And it's a reoccurring thing every Saturday. Stuff like this happens. And Tomoki gets upset with his dad that he didn't get to have ice cream. He didn't get to go on the truck. And eventually next Saturday comes around, and Toki gets excited because the ice cream truck is there. And eventually the dad caves in. He's like, all right, like I'll allow you to have some ice cream. But basically, like, one of the reasons is because the kid starts crying about how he hates his dad, how he wished he stayed with his mom. And I think the dad's just like, all right, well, if it'll make him happy just to have some ice cream and go on this truck, then let's do that. So he gets ice cream for the boy, and the kid goes onto the truck. And then we cut to later where the kid comes back home, and he basically explains that there's this giant strawberry ice cream in the middle of the truck, and everybody ate it, and I'm full, I'm not hungry anymore. And then he leaves. He goes to bed. And the next day, the father shows up home, and there's a bunch of like kids everywhere. And he thinks, oh, I guess Tomoki like made friends with the kids on the bus. But as the dad's like walking through the house, he realizes like it's super sticky. Like there's this weird substance everywhere. And he's like, it looks like it might be like melted ice cream. So the next Saturday comes, and all the kids are excited and getting on the bus. And the dad's like, hey, can I go on the bus ride with you? Like, I want to see what this is all about. And the bus driver's like, no, this is only for kids. Adults aren't allowed to go on the truck. And so Tomoki goes on the truck once again, yada, yada, yada. The dad comes home, and once again, he starts seeing this like weird, it looks like ice cream scoops everywhere. Like there's a giant scoop of what looks like ice cream outside of his apartment. He's like, all right, that's weird. He goes inside and he just sees more sticky stuff everywhere. And eventually he goes into the living room, and he's horrified because all of Tomoki's friends are there, but they're all melted. They all have turned into ice cream, and they've all melted. And Tomoki is licking all of his friends and eating them. And then Tomoki, like part of his face starts melting too. And the dad's like pushing him away. He's like, get away from there. Stop, eating your friends. Like, what's going on? And as he does that, the force of the push knocks Tomoki's head off. And Tomoki's head falls to the floor and starts melting. And the dad freaks out and screams. And as he's screaming, we cut to the bus driver. And he's driving the bus. And the headlights of the bus kind of look like eyeballs. And they move around, basically showing that the bus might not actually be a regular bus, but is actually some kind of weird entity. It might be alive. And that's how it ends. Yeah, it's pretty faithful to the manga. I'll say the differences are that in this one, Tomoki is a lot less annoying. Because in the manga, the manga is longer. Not by much, but there's just more scenes. And in it, Tomoki is basically constantly ragging on his dad, screaming that he wants ice cream, throwing fits, saying that he wants to be with his mom. And there's also a little bit of a moment where it kind of explains why like all the parents are okay with this weird, creepy bus driver taking their kids on a weird tour around the city. Because you would think, hey, this mysterious stranger wants all the kids to ride on his bus. We have no idea where he takes them. And he doesn't allow any of the parents on board. Like, that should be sending up a bunch of red flags. But in the manga, it's kind of explained. Basically, all the parents who like live there are either single moms or I don't know, maybe they have like weird, terrible relationships with their husbands, because they're all like infatuated with the bus driver. They see him as this like hot, sexy bus driver, and they all their common sense goes out the window when they look at him. So yeah. Other than that, it's pretty much a 1-for-1 adaptation. I do think that it's kind of interesting. We get this little quick Easter egg. You might not even notice. There's a moment where the father and Tomoki are watching the news, and there's this character, Terumi Fujino, and she's like this idol, and they're talking about some kind of event. It's like just quickly shown. And for anyone who doesn't know, Tuomi Fujino is actually a character in one of my favorite Junji Ito stories called The Hanging Balloons. So I thought that was kind of just a nice little Easter egg. It's one of my favorite stories. Like the Hanging Balloons, the Tall Lady, like those are kind of, I don't know why. There's just something about them. We got the story of the Mysterious Tunnel. And the story of the Mysterious Tunnel is one of my favorites as well. I love those stories where it's just like, it's just so weird and nothing really makes sense, and it's just creepy and unnerving. But yeah, I would say that this was, I guess it was a good episode. I really loved the story of the Mysterious Tunnel. I wish the entire episode was just that. I didn't really care for the bus driver, or the ice cream bus, I should say. I am just, the story itself is okay, but out of all the stories from Junji Ito that you can adapt, that's probably one I wouldn't have. Like, there's so many other better stories that you can tell from Junji Ito. I would not have used the ice cream truck story. I would have just instead have the entire episode be the story of the Mysterious Tunnel and just expand upon it. By that I mean adapt the actual ending of him trying to move on with his life, but ends up getting dragged back into the tunnel. Like, that is more horrifying than the kind of abrupt ending that we get. So that was a little bit of a shame. Other than that, I enjoyed it, especially the story of the Mysterious Tunnel. Like, just the way that they adapted it, and the horrifying ghost creatures going through the tunnel and going through people and then dragging them under and leaving nothing but blood puddles. Like, all that was like done really well. The voice acting was, again, good. Once again, I'm using the Japanese voice acting for this. So yeah, and it was pretty faithful. Like I said, the first one minus the ending is almost a 1-for-1. It's just the ending kind of changes. And the ice cream truck is also pretty faithful. The only thing more would just be the stuff that I've already talked about. But other than that, yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought this was a better episode than the previous one. Like, as much as I love the siblings, I think this would have been a better way to introduce people to Junji Ito, especially the story of the Mysterious Tunnel. That would have been a great episode 1. Just have the entire episode be devoted to that short story, and that would be a great way to introduce people to what you can expect from Junji Ito. So yeah, that's my thoughts on it. But there you go. Hope you enjoyed. Hope to see you next time. Take care. Later.